Welcome to Trash Talk, a podcast by Zero Waste Canada. I'm your host, Alistair McCall. I moved to Canada in 2017 from England, and I've since held a variety of roles in the waste industry, and currently sit on the Zero Waste Canada board. On this podcast, we will dive deep into the world of zero waste and the circular economy, speaking with change makers who are helping to lead us to a more waste-free, sustainable planet. On today's Trash Talk, we are joined by Jeff Wint from Recycling Alternative. Okay, Trash Talk is back, and we have Jeff here. So Jeff, who are you, what do you do, and what's your kind of like background in waste?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Alistair. Love talking trash. Um, I'm Jeff. I'm currently working with Recycling Alternative in Vancouver. I've got I don't know, about 12 or 13 years in the waste industry at this point. Um, I started really just by chance. I was living overseas, living in Edinburgh, and got a temporary job with the council there as they were shifting to start doing organics collection for the residential properties. So they had me on a team going door to door through all the tenements in Edinburgh, knocking on doors, talking to people about recycling and organics collection, which was definitely an interesting way to learn about the city and start learning about the waste management systems over there. And like I said, that was kind of quite by chance. Just picked that up through a temp agency. But it really did spark an interest in me in waste management. It was really interesting, to see how a city like that was shifting to start to do organics collection, also moving away from, piles of black bags on the old streets, and into more kind of containerized service. So yeah, that was really interesting. After that, I moved back to Vancouver. I started working for Organic City, or sorry, Growing City, at the time. And there, I got to experience a lot of different parts from driving trucks and trying to store bins, and got a bit of kind of startup experience through that.
Yeah.
After that experience, I got to move to Recycling Alternative, where again I got to experience lots of different parts of the business. Started doing dispatching, and then working through kind of customer service, account management, selling equipment, really getting to see all aspects of it, which was a really good learning experience. Um, yeah, from there, I think I've been lucky throughout my career getting to see lots of different aspects of waste management. So, starting in Edinburgh, I got to see some commercial collections, working for Recycling Alternative, getting to do ICI commercial collections. From there, I went to work for the District of Squamish, again back to kind of the residential community side. It was a really great community there, really forward thinking, trying to do as much as they can around waste diversion. Also really unique in BC in that it's a small municipality that does run its own landfill, as opposed to the regional district. So got to learn a lot about that. From there, moved over to the nonprofit world, did a bit of work with Ocean Wise on plastic reduction. And then at the beginning of this year, back to Recycling Alternative, which is really exciting. They were awarded a Recycle BC contract,
Mm.
for MRBs for the downtown Vancouver False Creek area, which is obviously a lot of work.
Yeah.
Really exciting for a small local company to get that, because, as I'm sure you know, that's not often going to smaller companies. Um, so I started working with Recycling Alternative again, really focusing on that contract. So that's been a lot of fun and a lot of work. And from now until February and beyond, when we launch that program, it's going to be pretty full steam ahead.
Yeah, a couple of just quick points there. So our start was kind of similar in waste. So I was the reverse. I moved the other way to Canada, and my first job was from Craigslist, and it was similar. Like going around, I think, Surrey, looking in people's bins and putting stickers on if the recycling was not what it should be. So yeah, kind of similar starts in waste. And you also cross paths a few times, you and I, in different roles, and it's just kind of cool how like the industry is quite close knit in many ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is our like I don't know how many chats we've had, but we've touched base on a few things in different yeah, different roles we've had. So it's cool to kind of yeah, keep that kind of close knit industry going. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Isn't that such a great way to learn about a new community to get to go through everyone's trash and recycling and you get
Honestly,
to
yeah,
talk to
it was a good like you mentioned like you learned loads from like doing that on your end, and then yeah, for me, yeah, it was like my first job in Canada was literally looking in people's bins, and yeah, it was a good way to learn the differences over here from home, right? So yeah, like, I would recommend it to people looking to get into waste, even though it isn't the cleanest job. Yeah, it was a good intro and yeah, it sparked my interest, and here I am, like 8 years later, still in it.
awesome. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes, you mentioned kind of Recycle BC contracts and kind of things that are happening on your end. So maybe um, give a kind of a history of the company and like what kind of led to this point and kind of what trends you're seeing in waste in Vancouver right now that you're kind of working around beyond just the Cycle BC contract?
Yeah. You mean the history of recycling alternative?
Sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, we everything's recycle something and it gets
yeah.
mixed up. Yeah, recycling alternative. So it's a Vancouver-based owned and operated company. The two owners, Louise Schwartz and Robert Weatherby, they started it in 1989. Um, Louise has what she calls her no away moment, where she really realized that there's no away. When you say I'm throwing something away, it still has to go somewhere. So she started driving around Vancouver in a hatchback, picking up paper from different office towers, and it's really grown from there. But at that point, I don't know if you know the Craft restaurant in Olympic Village.
Hmm,
So that
yeah.
used to be a paper mill or a paper receiving facility, and that's where that's where the business was really started out of. There was a phone on a post there. Um, so she was just driving around picking up paper, taking it there. And ever since that point, they've always been based in False Creek, in the False Creek Flats. So we're still there. We're on Industrial, right beside the tow yard. For any of your Vancouver listeners that have been towed recently, we're in the warehouse beside you there. Um, and always really community focused. So, you know, between running the recycling company, which, like I said, has been running since 1989, in the 2000s, I think 2004 to 2011, they ran the biodiesel co-op as well, to really start moving the conversation a little bit around or towards different fuel sources, trying to reduce carbon footprints even at that point. Um, Rob has always been, or in the last 10, 15 years, been really dedicated towards organics reduction. So, and started working with some overseas companies on-site composting technology. Found we weren't quite getting what we were looking for. So
Hmm,
a number of years ago now started Terraforma Systems and a fabrication shop as well. Also just down the road, so kind of by Main and Terminal, where we're actually manufacturing on-site composters. And all of this really shows that dedication to local, to the community, and to sustainability. One of the things that we really believe in um, is that community piece. So it's really important for us to have our warehouse in downtown Vancouver, close to where people live, so that we can keep jobs in downtown. Um, and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later. There's obviously a lot of development coming up in Vancouver. From our warehouse, we can kind of see towers encroaching on us from all different sides. There's a new hospital being built, which is great.
yeah.
Um, but we need to make sure that all the people living in these towers have access to jobs, whether they're, computer coders, or whether they're drivers or people sorting recycling. We need to make sure that there's, good equitable work for them. So that's one of the reasons why we feel it's really important to try to hold on to this warehouse, keep this location, and always trying to push forward on doing different things. Like the biodiesel co-op. Before there was organics collection at every apartment building, we were working with the city of Vancouver on drop spots at the farmers markets. Trying to give people access to organics diversion. So Recycling Alternative is really just a company that's always trying to push a little bit forward, and do something a little bit different. And we've been like that since we started in 1989.
Awesome. Yeah. You mentioned just quickly there on the composting and on-site composters. Maybe just kind of give a brief overview of kind of what that means and kind of what the technology does. I'm a huge fan of it myself. I've looked at it in previous roles and really kind of championed it. So just yeah, personally, I'm very keen to kind of share to our listeners kind of what the key benefits are with on-site composting.
Awesome. Yeah. So like I said, we are building them through our sister company called Terraforma Systems. What they are is on-site composters. So you're loading your food waste into it, and your compostable packaging. We've got them in a number of different sizes. But what it's really doing is starting that composting process. So your resulting material, it's not a finished compost, but if you think of the composting process, it's taken it about through the first 2 weeks of it, and it's really removed a lot of the moisture. So we're reducing the volume by about 80% over a 24-hour period. You're getting rid of a lot of the smells. It's not going to get moldy at that point. And you're taking almost all of the moisture out of it. So that resulting material, you still have to get it hauled off site, but you've got about 80% less material to get hauled off site. And you're not hauling around a bunch of moisture, and it's not going to smell as much. Um, and it's taking a lot of compostable packaging, which is great.
Mm.
We've obviously seen a lot of compost facilities, as more and more compostable packaging is getting used, a lot of the facilities are less and less keen on taking as much of it. So you've got kind of that tension there, between, consumers really wanting to use this stuff, brands thinking it's a great idea to put it out there.
Yeah.
Um, and then that end compost facility saying, hey, I can't take so much of this. You got to slow down with this. So this machine will help kind of process some of that, which helps on both ends there.
And what industries are most kind of keen on this so far?
Yeah, we've got them. I mean, we've got them across Canada at this point. Works really well in places like shopping centers, airports, places with food courts, where you're seeing a lot of food waste. Sorry, a lot of post-consumer food waste, a lot of that packaging, and then also a little bit of the prep food waste as well. Pretty much anywhere with high volume organics is going to be a good suit for this. We've tried it with things like dog waste as well,
Mm.
which has been interesting. Obviously, in Metro Vancouver, there's been lots of different people trying to figure out the best thing to do with dog waste. We can kill all the pathogens in it. You need to end up putting in a lot of wood chips to help kind of break down and get a reasonable material out of it. So it works. It's not a perfect application,
Yeah.
but for that post-consumer food waste, it really does work well. So, like I said, shopping centers, food courts, office towers, places like that, are where we've seen kind of the most interest so far.
Right. Yeah. It's a good example, I think, of kind of the future of waste collection, like how innovation is driving change. So I'm wondering, yeah, kind of what other things you're seeing happening, and what kind of planning is going on in Vancouver to kind of, bring waste into a more modern age, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of different things going on, which some of them are, I would say, competing pressures. So, from a really high level point of view, we've seen a number of companies in the last, 6 months or so, kind of taking a step back on sustainability targets.
Mm.
Um, a lot of companies, big CPG companies that have made these promises in the past, um, have been missing their targets. So, a lot of them are kind of reluctant to set new ones, or really push forward to try to achieve these. Um, so there's that kind of echoing in the background where we see less of an interest maybe in waste management sustainability as we had seen previously. But then at the same time, particularly in BC, we're seeing, EPR programs incentivized to collect more and more material. Recycle BC is a really great example of this. They're really pushing forward a lot on trying to collect that flexible packaging, doing a lot to figure out how to process it, doing a lot to figure out how to collect it properly, as well as how to educate people on what flexible packaging is. Even you know, here at a recycling company, when we say to our staff, we're going to start collecting flexible packaging as part of this Recycle BC contract, a lot of people are like, what is that? What does that mean? Like, what can I put in there? Um, so it's a new concept for people. And like I said, Recycle BC is really trying to like push forward on that. Um, I think at the same time, we're also seeing, people starting to grapple with some of the regulations that, either federally are coming in, provincially are coming in, things like a plastic registry. So people really trying to start, tracking their waste footprints, looking at their SKUs and looking at kind of what materials they have coming in. And then also looking at their single-use items, right? And trying to figure, okay, what are we going to have to get rid of in the next 5 years? What is causing these problems for us in our supply chain? So we've got all these kind of competing pressures of, maybe from a corporate point of view, less interest in it. But then from a regulatory point of view, having to comply with more and more different regulations. And so you're getting these competing pressures. And then people end up coming to companies like ours and saying, well, we don't know what to do. We need some help like navigating this world. So that's where we're trying to help people.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, there's a lot of different regulations in different parts of the country. Like, you're in BC, it's very different to me out here. Out Eastern Ontario, it's very different in terms of yeah, regulations are, and what items can and can't go in bins. And yeah, it's a very confusing landscape a lot of the time with waste, which makes our job a bit more difficult sometimes with explaining things to customers or clients and everything, and like how to adapt when things kind of keep changing, right? So,
Yeah, that why can I put this in my bin at home versus,
yeah.
why can I not do that at work sort of thing. It's a pretty constant question. We'll go and, do presentations for green teams, and they always want to talk about, how we can set up a different system. But I can guarantee you by the end of any lunch and learn I've ever done, we start talking about what can go in what bin, and why it can or can't go in there. And it really shows, waste is such a key part of any kind of building operation, whether it's residential, commercial. Um, when they're looking at kind of their sustainability budget and, sustainability impact, changing lights or changing windows, something like that is probably going to have a much bigger reduction on your carbon footprint. But you really have to like shout it from the rooftop to let people know you're doing that.
Mm.
If you start implementing a more effective recycling system, everyone knows that because everyone that goes into a building has to interact with that system every single day. So it's a really, it's a good way to show your values, I find, is to make sure that you've implemented a proper recycling system.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, looking back at kind of the new age of waste collection, maybe share with our listeners the exciting update on your like new whole fleet of trucks. That's a big one. I think they'd be keen to kind of hear about. So, want to speak to that a bit
Yeah.
more? Yeah.
Yeah, so with our new Recycle BC contract, we are going to be implementing some new vehicles, obviously. So half of that fleet is going to be fully electric, which is super exciting for us. We've got one electric truck on the road now. These are going to be new ones. So they're coming out of the States. Initially, we'd actually planned on a little bit more EV, but with some of the challenges getting stuff across the border right now,
Yeah.
we've decided to implement, some diesel. The diesel is going to be on a renewable diesel program. But the electric ones are really going to work great. So for our Recycle BC contract, we've got a pretty tight area. It's the downtown Falls Creek area, so kind of like Larch to just past Fraser, um, and then up to about 16th and downtown. So it's a pretty tight little area in Vancouver. So the EVs are going to work really, really well in there.
Hmm.
Um, the constraining factor on the routes is really going to be capacity much more than the EVs. So, right now we're looking at how we can best implement a new charging system or a new charging station for us, seeing if we can get a little bit more space, which would be really exciting, because that's going to give us the opportunity to expand our EV fleet even further beyond just beyond these five.
Do you think that could be a wider trend in the industry, like haulers changing to EV trucks kind of commonplace in the near future, or what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's definitely a lot of potential for EV, and given, how a lot of waste routes are set up, I think it's a good use case. One of the common challenges we hear is like, we know we can get battery for some of the haulers that are a little bit further out. We know we've got the range to get into town to collect, but if we need a little bit more charge, to get back to the disposal facility and back to home base, how are we going to do that? Like there isn't really access to commercial charging stations. You see tons of, public charging stations out there, but they're not going to charge a garbage truck very quickly.
Yeah.
One of the things we're looking at with our station, is there an opportunity to open that up to some other commercial vehicles? Um, whether it's another garbage truck, whether it's a delivery vehicle who might have, come from, either the airport or another suburb, come downtown, done a bunch of deliveries or done a bunch of pickups, and just needs a little bit more juice, like 10-15%, to get back to where they're going. So, when we're looking at these sorts of projects, we're really trying to look beyond just what's going to work for us and seeing if there's ways that we can help kind of with a wider adoption to EV because, especially in waste, it can be a really effective tool. And we are starting to see more and more EVs. I know that GFL up in Squamish got one. I think Mterra up in Courtney Comox has got a fleet of EVs running up there now. So, we are starting to see this moving along locally here, which is great.
That's great to hear. Yeah. And then just like looking at the final question here. So what planning is kind of in place in Vancouver right now that's kind of helping the industry? You mentioned the high rise and pick up like what collections happening there. So what help are you kind of seeing or what change are you seeing in the city to kind of being towards waste collection with policy and planning?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some challenges. So, within the section of Vancouver we're going to be doing for Recycle BC is a good chunk of the Broadway plan. I think over the next 10 years, they're expecting something like an additional 40,000 households in that
Mm,
area. And right now, we actually do quite a bit of work with architects to help them, design a waste room, make sure collections can happen. And what we're seeing is a lot of like, you get a podium and you get two towers on a property. So it's about, 1,000 units or 800 units, which means you've got a lot of waste. And it's a
yep.
pretty small footprint. Um, some of these newer developments have massive, massive waste rooms because they've got to get so many totes in there for, largely for residential recycling. Um, one of the things we're starting to think about is there better ways to be doing this? Because, totes work great for, a four-story walk up where there's, 30 units or something and you get eight totes out back. That's great. If you have 1,000 units and you got to have, 120 totes, we're we're not doing this very efficiently. It takes a truck a long time to do that. It takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
Is there better ways to be doing this? So, one of the things that needs to happen is really coordination there um, between the city and their policy people, the EPR programs who are going to be receiving the residential material, and then the haulers as well, so that we can all kind of come to an agreement on what is the next best way forward, whether that's, low pro compactors for certain materials or, is there a centralized consolidation that can be happening? Does every tower need their own waste room or, can we start to share a little bit? So I
Mm.
think there's a few different ways that this could be moving forward.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Well, one thing I'd say is don't look at shoots because yeah, like out here in Ontario, that's the a common yeah building kind of requirement for high rise, and yeah, operationally not good. From a waste standpoint, not good. So yeah, I'm envious of Vancouver and BC where yeah, the waste room people come down to the waste rooms, they separate for the most part their recycling, organics and garbage, and it's fairly clean. It's one of the highest rates in the country for um yeah, for separating materials. So yeah, there's good things happening already, which is great. But then, like you're saying, there's more kind of coordination, more help that can be kind of brought in to take it to the next level, even more than what it already is. So yeah, good to hear. All right, yeah. Yes, like final kind of point is, yeah, any particular thing you would love to see change from a policy standpoint. You mentioned there's yeah, kind of more discussion happening between different parties like haulers in the city and so on? Is there kind of one thing you would point to that you see day to day that's like, right, this needs to change ASAP?
Um, I mean, I don't think there's one, silver bullet that's gonna
Yeah.
fix our waste problems. Anytime you go into a store and, you start looking at packaging, there's so many different types of packaging out there now, different plastics, multi-materials, all sorts of different types. And, as a recycler, we're kind of expected to just be able to take it, sort it, manage it somehow. Really without any coordination from packaging designers coming to us and saying like, hey, is there anything you can do with this? Or,
Mm,
what should be happening to this? So, um, you know, I, I don't think we can put it back in the can at this point. We're not going to be able to say, all right, all packaging should just be, a PET or a PP or something. Um, I think a plastic registry just to start to track the different sorts of materials out there would be really valuable. Um, I think the compostable packaging had a rough couple of years. It was really seen as that golden bullet.
mm,
And if we'd done this conversation in 2016, I would have told you that everything was going to be single stream compostable at some point in the near future.
yeah.
Um, and then it kind of we went away from that. And I think there are opportunities around that, in the right instances, particularly around food packaging, to be looking at is there a compostable packaging that's going to work more effectively here? Because we get a lot of, so much food contaminated
Mm,
plastics that are really challenging to manage. So um, I think it's really, around some of the packaging designers, and I'm focusing on packaging so much just because that's mostly what we see, obviously, in our garbage. There is some piece around construction plastics, and actually, I haven't mentioned this yet, but we are doing a bit of work with Lighthouse on a construction plastic project, which is pretty exciting,
mhm,
where they've got some construction sites collecting plastic separately. It's coming to our warehouse. We're sorting it into different plastics. Some of it just to track to see what plastics are actually getting used, and then some of it to get to different recyclers or plastic processors to see if they can actually, manage this stuff, like some of the lumber wrap and things. Um, but
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, stay tuned on that. I don't have the results on that yet. But beyond that, I think they're really just from that design point of view, thinking about the end of life a little bit more, would be the best way for us to start to manage our waste a little bit better.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for your time today, Jeff. It's great to chat to you again, and yeah, look forward to sharing this with our listeners. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for having me.